Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. 60 years ago, 55 Alaskans assembled from all walks of life with differing beliefs and ideologies, each strong-minded with equally strong opinions. The task before them would test a different kind of strength. Who was strong enough to compromise? Who had the depth of character to move from a position they knew in their hearts was right, knowing that their colleagues were equally certain of their own positions and equally wanted to create a future for Alaska that was bright and full of opportunity. The unimaginable happened, as we know, and those 55 delegates emerged from a hall in Fairbanks, much as our nation's founders emerged 200 years before in Philadelphia, with a document. The Alaska Constitution would be hailed and emulated around the world for its fairness, its consideration of individual rights and privacies, the acknowledgement of Alaskans' collective ownership of our resources, and its affirmation of the democratic process. As remarkable as it was, this was not the first time that Alaskans had come together from across the political spectrum to bring about real advancements. 15 years previously, inspired by Elizabeth Peratrovich and her calls for basic civil rights for Alaska Natives, the Territorial Senate met in what was called a Committee of the Whole to debate equal rights and a bill that would prohibit racial discrimination in Alaska. Even though many senators spoke against equal rights at the committee, the forward-thinking whole passed the Alaska Civil Rights Act in a vote of 11-5. Less than a decade after the Constitution was ratified, massive oil deposits were discovered on Alaska's North Slope fundamentally changed the course of our destiny in ways the founders could not have imagined. This avalanche of oil wealth spurred some forward-thinking Alaskan leaders to come together to create a plan, preparing us for the day when the seemingly infinite supply of oil money reached its inevitable end. Alaskans, who now had a constitutional stake in their own commonly owned resources, also had a stake in a future prosperity through Alaska's permanent fund. 60 years have passed. Alaska still, in its formative years, compared to most other states in the Union, we still have growing pains. There are definitive moments in Alaska's history when all of us, with the hands on the tiller, are called to steer our ship of state away from the rocks, to chart a course to open water and a prosperous future. So far, we've steered that ship pretty well, but today we find ourselves at another defining moment in history. Our Constitution stands firm, but the cash cow's running dry, and it's time, once again, for Alaskans to come together in strength and in a spirit of optimism and cooperation to chart a new course. There are many courses that could lead us from disaster, but by doing nothing, there's only one outcome. We'll crash, and we all go down together. Our history of working together in a collaborative alliance in Alaska is strong, and when the chips are down and the situation is urgent, we've always come through, shedding our identities as Republicans or Democrats, and remembering that in our core, we are Alaskans first, we are Alaskans together. In 1959, when we came together and ratified our Constitution, and in 1976, when we used that Constitution and came together to create a secure future with our permanent fund. The last time we worked together, in 2006 to 2012, Alaskan legislative leadership formed what was called a bipartisan working group. Bipartisan, two parties working together, and it did work. Republicans and Democrats co-chaired committees, shared ideas, solutions, and gavelled, charted a course together, agreeing to put inflammatory partisan issues aside and work in unity for the good of the state we loved. And we did. Together, we passed good legislation. Together, we saved more than $18 billion for a rainy day, $18 billion in the bank when we worked for the common good. Now, that $18 billion is drawn down to about $4 billion and shrinking fast. We're even thinking about tapping that insurance plan that Governor Jay Hammond worked so hard to put in place. The rocks are close. We're running out of time. It's with this knowledge and in the spirit of reconciliation and unity that the Alaska Independent Democratic Coalition and the Senate Democrats extend our hand and offer to go back to the last model we had that actually worked. There's no worse time to be the captain of a ship than when faced with an imminent wreck, and we understand this. Our Republican colleagues are not in an enviable position. Regardless of what they decide, they will be asking Alaskans to make unpopular sacrifices. Everyone will dislike the fiscal plan, no matter what it looks like. We do not want to see our Republican colleagues fail because we do not want to see Alaska fail. And it's because of this that we now, in good faith, offer to come together using the old model of the bipartisan working group to join with a majority in solving these issues which are absolutely critical to Alaska's prosperous future. We offer to share the responsibility and the burden. It's possible that our colleagues will say no. It's possible that the partisan divisions are too deep and too wide to overcome. It's possible that the grip of political power is too strong. But Alaskans have overcome before. We've been strong enough to work together before. We have surmounted seemingly unsurmountable obstacles because of our devotion, our loyalty, and our belief in Alaska. And whether we like it or not, the 29th Alaska Legislature has a place in history, and we will be remembered. Just as those Republicans and Democratic leaders of the past were able to take the long view and plan ahead for generations they would never know, so must we. And because we know that we have succeeded every time Alaskans have united across party lines, we say to our Republican friends, we're here, we're ready, and we will shoulder this with you for the good of the state and the people we all love. And Representative Tuck.
Thank you, Senator Gardner. Hello, I'm Representative Chris Tuck, leader of the Alaska Independent Democratic Coalition. We recognize families are concerned about the current direction of our state. None of us want to see our friends and neighbors move because Alaska does not offer enough education or job opportunities. These are critical times. The decisions we make during this session can either grow or hurt the economy. The challenges ahead have the potential to overwhelm the ability of the Alaska Legislature to respond under the current partisan political caucus system we have today. The Alaska Independent Democratic Coalition, along with the Senate Democrats, are committed to finding more efficient ways to come together and get done with this session in 90 days. Like the 55 delegates who came together to draft our Constitution 60 years ago, we believe in Alaska and its great potential. Over the course of 75 days, they were able to move past their philosophical and political differences and sign their names to a body of fundamental rights and principles by which Alaska was to be governed. So we don't want to make this session about us versus them, majority versus minority, or Republicans versus Democrats. We want to go back to the days when, once we were all elected, we all pulled together and did what's best for Alaska. And now is the time that we do that. We all work together. We work together so our differences make us strong, work together to make things better so we can continue investing in our families and our communities. And doing so, we will find that we have more in common than we do differences. What we have proposed is intended to start serious conversations, establish trust, and build confidence in the institution of the Alaska Legislature. A politician thinks of the next election. A statesman thinks of the next generation. Now is the time for every member of the Alaska Legislature to be statesmen and stateswomen. So let us all come together, form a caucus of the whole, and do what's best for Alaska. And we will open it up to questions.
Name and affiliation, please.
Becky Bohr with the Associated Press. Can you speak to how your meetings went with the Senate President and the Speaker, if you've had those meetings, what sort of response you've gotten? And then I guess secondly, in terms of the impetus for this, were you feeling included, I guess, in budget talks? Or is there some sort of level of exclusion that led to you proposing this step?
Well, I was actually very pleased with the reception from Senator Meyer. He was a member of the bipartisan working group. He has experience in this kind of thing, and he had questions, and we don't have all the answers. These are things that we will be talking about, but I think it's something that they would consider, and we're looking forward to hearing from them. We haven't talked about this for very long with them. It was just this morning, but we understand we have to give them time to consider and meet with their own caucuses and get back to us.
And we did have, there's been a lot of dialogue, a lot of discussions amongst members through this first weeks of session. Nobody wants to go through what we went through last year, special session after special session after special session. It really is important that we have more dialogue, and so and everyone on both sides sees this as necessary. The speaker was very open to the idea. Again, he does have to go to his members and talk about it. The mechanics of it will still have to work out, but that's the most important thing, is that we're discussing this.
Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, Nat Hers with Alaska Dispatch News. I'm just wondering, I mean, there are a lot of sort of mechanics that go along with majority and minority and the way things are structured currently. I mean, are you guys proposing that sort of along with this change in organization, you know, you'd see changes in committee membership? Would your guys' staff members get paid the same amount as the majority members get paid? Would you guys get control over the travel budgets like they do? Does that all go along with this?
Well, I would say that's all a possibility, but not necessarily needed. Right now, what we need to have is the open dialogue and the coming together. So we'll work out those details. We'll look at history. We'll look at what worked and what hasn't worked. We may even have to research some other state legislatures to see how they've made it work. But we're open to any of those ideas.
Well, can I just follow up and ask, sort of, what do you guys see as the major, you know, it's like the Republican-led majorities right now, like they have all the power. You guys are essentially asking them to share it with you. If you're the majorities, why would you do this?
I think we've both received indications that they want us to be on board with some of the decision making, and we want to make that a very more holistic approach where all of us can speak freely and in confidence with our colleagues. And right now, that's very difficult to do. So we say if we are a caucus of the whole, then the ground rules kind of change, and that's what we're interested in doing to find the best solution.
So, and just a little bit further, we're offering to share the burden and responsibility and the leadership in making these decisions. How that comes together is still yet to be determined.
Liz Raines with KTVA. I guess kind of another logistical question here. Who would chair the caucus, and would these meetings be public, or would these be behind closed door meetings?
Well, I want to say, first of all, we're not having a vision of how must-haves, a bunch of must-haves, because that sort of defeats the whole purpose. This is something that everything's open for negotiation. What we want to do is make sure that at the end of the day, hopefully within 90 days, Alaska has a sustainable fiscal plan that people can rely on for investing and living into the future here in Alaska. That is our goal, and there are a lot of different ways to do it. There are a lot of elements. What's the leadership? What's the structure? Where are the meetings held? Caucus meetings, there are good reasons when you're talking strategy, negotiating with the governor, things like that, that are behind closed doors, and to the extent possible, everything should be in the open.
Matt Buxton, Fairbanks Daily News Miner. One of the big things, obviously, last year, and maybe one of the reasons, I guess, for this all is, you know, there was the issue of in the House of reaching, you know, the CBR vote. I guess, how has that been going so far? I think the lesson last year was, like, maybe don't do that right at the last minute. Has that been going on, and is this kind of a response to whatever is happening so far now?
Yeah, and that's our Constitution requires us to work together when we have a loss of revenue, such as we've had in the last couple of years. So last year, we all got caught a little bit flat-footed. Unfortunately, things did wait to the end. Things are going on a lot earlier, and we hope by having a caucus on the whole, we can exercise a lot of these ideas a lot quicker, sooner, with a better outcome.
Do you feel good about the process in place now? Should leadership come back and say, thanks, but we'll stick with what we have? Do you feel comfortable, I guess, with your relationships with the Senate President and the Speaker, with the committee process, with the current rules, that you think that there still is room for a bipartisan solution, even if you don't get what you're hoping for?
Well, I can say that many members, not just Representative Tuck and myself, have been having individual conversations with other legislators of all parties, every caucus in the body. I mean, I hear these conversations going on in the airplane and, I mean, everywhere. But everybody's kind of keeping their cards close to their vests, and I'm not prepared to talk to people outside of my caucus about what I really, really want in specifics. That's not my role. It's the role of leadership to say, this is what we propose. And that is a burden. And we're prepared to share that and then be frank with each other. But for right now, it's not my responsibility to say, this is what our fiscal plan should look like.
Is this an all or nothing caucus? I mean, can you get just a couple members of the majorities over, and then all of a sudden it's much more like the partisan coalition was when it first formed? Is it 11 and 21?
We don't want to form a different majority minority. We want us all coming together. So that would defeat the purpose if something like that were to happen. So we want all of us together on this.
Any additional questions?
Was there a date by which you asked to get a response? Is this sort of a moving target that could happen organically in the next few weeks?
If it's going to happen, I think we'll know fairly soon, but we haven't set a hard date.
And if it happens organically, that's a good thing as well.
No more questions?
Any additional questions?
Okay, well, let me just say, this is a really serious offer. We've all thought about it. It's been carefully considered, has the support of every member of both of our caucuses. We've all heard a lot of input from Alaskans about what to do with the fiscal crisis. Opinions are all over the map. The surveys don't jibe with the public testimony necessarily. But one thing we hear over and over is that Alaskans want us to work together, to put politics aside, to focus on the big issues and just get it done. It makes sense because most Alaskans are neither Republican nor Democrat. Alaska's bigger than our political parties, and we've taken that message to heart. We look forward to hearing back from our colleagues and to getting down to work in a unified manner. Thank you.